Welcome back to the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast. In today's episode, Scott and I discuss training for children. Should they be lifting weights? Should they not be lifting weights? How far and how early should we be pushing kids to be athletic? If you like today's podcast, make sure you subscribe, rate, review, share with your friends, and enjoy this episode of the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast. Scott, how goes it?
Hey, it's going pretty well. Enjoying the summer.
Oh man, isn't it the best? But I digress, Scott. Yeah. I just got a message from somebody on Instagram and I'm triggered. Okay. So Bear with me here. They sent me a video of an 8-year-old gal doing clean and jerks. And presumably this is at some national championship or whatever. The caption is that the young lady is a gymnast, but also does weightlifting. And from my perspective, it's as good as a technique as you can get for an 8-year-old. And I believe this young gal probably has over 90 pounds on the bar, 8 years old, 90 pounds. And again, 8 years old, from what they say, I don't know this, how things are. An 8-year-old is a 13-year-old these days. Anyway, I digress.
Right. But that's almost certainly going to be way over body weight, right?
Yeah, probably.
Well, because my son is 8 and he doesn't weigh 90.
Yeah, he's probably a little over a pood right now. Anyway, So, I of course, have to take a look at the dumpster fire that is the comment section. And there is a bunch of keyboard warriors saying, this isn't healthy for a girl to do. This isn't right. So let me tell you why I'm triggered. For one, everybody is an expert, especially in the comment section of Instagram, YouTube, whatever. But the second thing is my constant reevaluation of whether or not kids should be weightlifting and to what capacities they do. So I want to get your instant gut reaction here, Scott. What is your perspective on specifically an 8-year-old young lady Olympic lifting? And be sure of this, Scott. You probably will get canceled with this answer.
No matter what I say.
Go right ahead, Scott.
Wow. I'll preface it, of course.
Go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
I would say I'll preface it. I haven't actually seen this video, but I can visualize. Gymnastics is while they're not lifting a heavy external load, they are handling a huge amount of force of their own body weight. So it's not that dissimilar, and we seem completely fine to have young kids do gymnastics. And it is Olympic lifting, which is more of a explosive ballistic, not unlike gymnastics in some ways. I would feel probably more comfortable with an 8-year-old weightlifter than I would an 8-year-old powerlifter, for example. But I honestly don't know. It seems like it would be hard to imagine that there would not be some down the line effects, maybe not negative, from doing that at such a young age. And I will also say I really am not, it's an area that I've never really delved into much. I've never really trained kids. And so, as far as growth plates and, these various things in developmental stages, I guess another thought that comes to mind is we certainly know that there are athletic development programs, particularly in some other countries, where they certainly are having weightlifters train at that age. But I could be wrong here. Again, not an area of expertise, but I believe that they do lots of very light technique reps primarily. And I don't know if they're lifting that heavy yet. I could be wrong.
Yeah. All right. So some other things to unpack here. And again, first off, we have to distinguish between the main paradigm of health and longevity versus human performance, like peak human performance, right?
Yep.
And here's the problem that occurs when you are looking at an 8-year-old boy, girl, doesn't matter, doing a sport at that age, is that, yes, they are 8 years old, but with an Olympic sport like weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, or gymnastics, or whatever else, you are kind of starting to treat these young individuals like professional athletes very early on. For females, I mean, you have gals in the Olympics at 14. That's the minimum age requirement. So if you think about it, they're probably performing at very high levels, 8 to 10, 12 years old. Like, that's fairly early in the development of an individual. So if you were to say, okay, you're only going to be starting to really push it at age 12, let's say for a female gymnast, they might be too far behind to even like compete in the sport. But then there's the devil's advocate side of it that says, should we be allowing young individuals to be competing at this level and at that level this early on in their development? Like, what's the implications for them? And are they able to make those decisions? And if their parents are making those decisions, is that, is that doing harm to these young individuals? So I think this is a really, really nuanced topic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, you definitely get into that, because a lot of times I think it is largely the parents driving, right? It kind of goes against the child's natural innate tendencies to, practice, and basically they can't have a whole lot of the time left for normal kid-like life, right? Because they still have school and all those things that are, compulsory to do as well. Very few kids would self-select that. But then if you're a parent and you're, largely, guiding your child down this path, are you setting them up for, all this, maybe poor health down the line?
Yeah. I think that's a great point, Scott. And to add to that is, I almost feel that like we're going to start looking at something like this as an example of, wait a second, why have we been doing this for this long? Right. And again, we go to the whole Simone Biles thing that was all over the news during the Olympics. But, Simone Biles was competing at like 15, 16 years old in the Olympics. And, oh, by the way, they're also wearing like, barely anything. The sexification and the glorification of that type of that aspect of sport at 15, 16 years old. But then again, you think of it also this way, is that they are getting an opportunity to like set themselves up for the rest of their life. And who are we to, stop someone from doing that, right? It's the same reason why I believe that, there probably will always be a place for things like football and combat sports and that kind of stuff, because like not everybody is going to have the opportunity to, invent an app or work for, a Fortune 500 company. And they're going to need means, their physical body to get them into a better economic state and have better opportunity, and then pass that on to their kids. So like, I don't think that might be the answer of like, oh, you don't let anybody do anything, because then I think we're living in that that bubble world. But I also think this is like we said, a nuanced topic that we need to start looking at things like, are we doing this because it's the best thing that we can do? Or are we doing this because we've always done it that way?
Yeah. Certainly when it comes to all sports, the always done it that way certainly is a big factor. I did just remembered now that you had mentioned it, a quick little story. When my wife and I were in Sedona a couple months ago, one of my wife's mother's friends just happened to be in town as well. And we ended up meeting up for an afternoon brunch or something. And they got to talking. And anyway, apparently this woman's daughter was fairly high up in gymnastics at one point. And basically now she's probably 40 or something, but she basically has nothing to do with her mother. She's very bitter at her because she has sort of a broken body, and she blames her mother on pushing her in gymnastics. Her mother's very driven, type A, both corporate and I'm sure, really pushed her. And I'm sure part of it is that, she never did any rehab or tried to build herself back and, took a broken down person mentality. But at the end of the day, though, it actually sounds like in this particular instance is exactly what we saw actually played out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that also goes to that idea of conditional love. And I know this is kind of an interesting topic for individuals, but I know that there are a lot of people who listen to this podcast who have kids, right? And they're, if you're listening to this, you're probably a former athlete or have done something in the realm of sports or athletics. And it's like, how do I then take what I've done and pass along the lessons, but not, but toe that line of forcing my kid into doing something because I want them to do it and I know what's best for them, right? Instead of having that mentality of like, I'm here to nurture them, learn with them, see what they like to do. And then if I have the potential of sharing something or guiding them and they're open to it, then like taking that opportunity, but realizing that like, I'm just here to kind of like join them on their journey instead of forge their path for them,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, what's your perspective as cause you have an 8-year-old, obviously you have a step son who's a little older now, but what Keone, like, what if he started getting interested in like BMX? You know what I mean? Like, what would your take on that be?
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to make sure that, I'm not pushing him into anything. And as it turns out, he really does not like bike riding. He does get the contrarian thing of his father. So if dad and his buddies can do bike tricks, I'm too cool to even ride a bike. But he did get into baseball this year, and that's baseball is a sport that I've always enjoyed. I was never really good at it, but I follow it a little bit, and he wanted to play baseball. He made that decision himself. We were even kind of like, "You're sure?" Because he didn't really know that much about it, but no. And he did baseball. He did summer ball, and so he's having fun, and we supported that, and but we're not like pushing him. You got to do fall ball. We got to practice every day. We definitely, reminded him to practice if he wants to get better, and would anytime he asked, we'd go out and throw the ball or whatever. So I think supporting him, but not pushing him. Yeah. Yep. Because that's an easy way to, have him start to resent it or not enjoy it.
Absolutely. And there was one other point I wanted to make about specifically Olympic lifting for young individuals, because again, you have to start doing these movements fairly early on if you plan on, let's say, making the Olympics, right? I don't know. Is 8 years old too early? I don't know. Like, what does this 8-year-old look like? What do they move like? That kind of stuff. But in general, what I've seen is that pretty much any kid under the age of 13 doesn't have enough kinesthetic awareness and control over, I would say, probably like rib cage and pelvis, and let's just say multi-joint articulations, that they can load without eventually becoming compensatory. That being said, when we look at, let's say, the Chinese weightlifting program, like you said, they have that basis of like gymnastics, but they're doing lots of light technique work very early on. And then probably around like that 11 to 13 years old, that's when they start like driving home the sport. like you're going to have compensatory patterns to become elite at the sport, right? Like locking in your lower back and having hypermobility through your shoulders and ankles. Like that's your prerequisites to be elite at that sport. So if you're going to be an elite athlete, yeah, you're going to have compensatory patterns, and yes, start early and ingrain those compensatory patterns. But if you're doing it so that you can become the best athlete you can be, I would shy toward movements and practices that allow you for full movement capacity, right? And my fiance keeps laughing at me and telling him I'm a dum-dum about this, but I'm like, I would love to get Elliot eventually into dance, like dance, pop dance, break dancing, all that stuff, while also learning how to throw a ball. Because for a few reasons, and again, like I pontificate here as my kid doesn't want to do anything to do with dance in about a year or two. One, multi-joint movement, learning how to move your body in space. I don't think I've ever seen a break dancer like not be able to do almost anything well, like outside of it, just because they know how to move. Also, there's no external loading. You did make a good point though, Scott, that like the plyometric effects, create multiples of body weight compressing on joints. So I think that's a really good point. Like, yeah, it may not look like much, but like kids doing these amazing, gymnastic feats on floor and on the rings and all that kind of stuff, it's still going on. You just see the weight in their hands. So keep that in mind. But then the other reason I want dance is rhythm, and he can do it anywhere. And I think that's one of the things that I oppose, like parents in general, as they start really ingraining a sport onto a kid, is that they almost become trapped in the arena. And like, okay, you've got to go to the gym. You've got to go to the basketball court. You've got to go to, like, I want him to be able to like do it anywhere and explore like different places and spaces. And also like, if he wants to express himself, he could do that anywhere. Like he could just dance anywhere he wants. He could dance on a street corner, in a in a gym, in the driveway. And I think that's one of the cooler things about like, having proficiency in dance is it's just a tool to express yourself. So I don't know. That's kind of where my head's at. Scott, what's your perspective?
Yeah, no, I think that as far as giving great body control and movement and of all kinds of different articulations in many different ways, and the rhythm piece, I think it allows you to, like you said, the break dancer, right? There's probably pretty much any physical task he or she's going to figure out pretty quickly based on the amount of body control. So that would be good. And then I think another thing, with parents thinking about things that their kids might want to do for sports, I think a valuable point to consider is the eye of longevity. Like, how long could my son or daughter possibly enjoy this activity? Because if you get into a sport that adults, generally do, right, from young adults on into older adults. A good example would be, let's say, soccer, right? I know, at least around here, as long as you can walk, you can probably find a soccer league of people to play with, right? Yep. So that, and I think that's a valuable thing, both not needing an arena, but also having an arena. But there's other sports that kind of flame out. Like, why do you play football? I mean, football, don't get me wrong, I'm not trashing that, but I mean, once you're done with high school, assuming you're not going to go on to college, and most don't, I mean, you're kind of done. I mean, there are some flag football leagues, but even then, that's, by the time you get to, your 30s or so, that's probably not looking too viable as an option either. Scott.
It's a great point. Yeah. And I'll leave you this about the dance thing. The last thing, Fred Astaire, who is one of the most historically famous and best dancers of all time, YouTube Fred Astaire hitting golf balls. There's a video of him where there's like 5 or 6. He's at like doing some kind of tap dance thing at a it's on a sound stage, but it's made up to look like a country club. And in one take, he has to hit like 5 golf balls in a row while dancing. And it looks like a professional golfer. Like he has the ability to rotate and articulate joints. And I guarantee he's never swung a golf club in his life, but he just, because he has that body awareness and the flexibility and the mobility and again, like just the capabilities, it looks like he's been doing this all his entire life. So that I think has ingrained into me, like, man, the importance of dance. I think it really is. And another one is look up Baryshnikov and the size of his effing legs as he jumps. You know, he has like a 40-inch vertical, the size of his quads. He looks like a linebacker, and never lifted a weight in his life. So yeah, I think this is a good discussion, Scott, and I really like to have your perspective on this.
Yeah, well, and remember for many years I trained the dance company here in town, and I will say, you know, many dancers over the course of a decade of doing that, and it was always very easy to teach them new skills. Like, you know, didn't matter what it was physically, like they would learn it very, very quickly.
Yep.
And, you know, compared to, you know, any other population. So just something to consider there as well.
Scott, if anybody wants to work with you on a coaching basis, how can they do it?
Reach out to me. Probably the easiest is DM me on Instagram, Scott Hagnes Training. And you can also email me at scotthagnestraining@gmail.com.
Awesome. And you can grab me at Flock Fitness, flockfitness.com. Shoot me an email, fill out a contact form for any personal training, nutrition, or programming needs. Scott, thank you for your time, brother.
Absolutely.
I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Talk to you then.
Later.
Thank
you so much for listening to today's podcast. If you like what you heard, please go online, give us a 5-star review, subscribe, share this podcast with a friend, and we'll see you next time with a brand new episode of the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast.